self-love, which ultimately grew from her connection to spirit. So, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So when we met, we were talking about various different things. I had just done a speech myself on trauma and all of those different things and trying to be bold and making changes. And you shared with me your story. So can you just kind of get us started with the origins of your story?
Yes. So I am a second generation Korean-Filipino only child of my immigrant parents. And with all the traditions of Korean-Filipino culture, they were very strict on academics and socials, basically going out. I wasn't really able to go out. I wasn't really able to hang out with friends. I wasn't allowed to date, especially while I was in school. And I had all of the um, I guess, the strictness of academics. So I remember one time I came home with a B plus and I got chewed out by
Mhm.
my dad, where he said that the B plus was way too close to an A minus. So that, times 1,000 over my whole childhood, I started to hear from my parents that whatever I did, I was not good enough.
Yeah.
So carried that along through my young adult years. Here I am now because I don't have the ability or the knowledge of how to hang out with friends, how to meet boys, how to talk to them, anything like that. So I didn't have a lot of suitors coming after me, and I didn't know how to talk to boys. So when the first boy showed me any attention in college, I thought, oh, wow, he likes me. And, part of me was like, oh, well, I got to make this work because I don't know if there's another boy that's going to come around.
Mm.
No, don't get me wrong. I did like him. He cared for me. And ultimately, we dated for about 7 years and we ultimately got married. But hindsight is always 2020, which we
Yeah.
always realize. And the marriage was rocky from the beginning, and the relationship was rocky from the beginning, but I didn't know any better. I always wanted to make it work. So as I continued to make it work, um, as it was very rocky, I started to realize, oh, you know what? I feel alone in this marriage.
Mm.
He was a great provider, but as a provider, I felt he wasn't emotionally present for me and ultimately to my children as well.
Yeah.
So we went through therapy on and off over the 17 years that we were together, on and off, and went to therapy and stuff. And at some point, the therapist had indicated that he appeared to have some narcissistic traits.
Right.
So throughout the marriage and relationship, I started to hear the message that I was not worthy of his time and money. So
Mm.
now couple that with from my parents where I'm not good enough. So I carried that with me for a very long time.
Can
Yeah,
we step back? So
sure.
I know your parents gave you the indication or the feeling that you were not good enough. Have you forgiven them?
Yes.
Yeah.
So through all my work, learning about just in my journey about growth and self-love, I
Hmm.
started to realize that my parents were basically, they were doing their best at the
Hmm.
time. I know they loved me, so I never doubted that they loved me, but
Right.
I knew that now I know that they were just doing their best. They were doing what they thought that all they knew, really. I just want to add to that story too. When I left my parents' house, I ran away at 19
Yeah.
because they were so strict. And I was estranged from my parents, my dad for about 10 years, and then estranged from my mom for about 3. So,
It's
so yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So Asian culture in general is very strict.
yes, yeah,
Yes, especially when
yeah.
it comes to grades and what what is the belief as to a woman's worth in your culture?
Um, I think typically it's very much just kind of just you're there, you serve, and you're quiet.
Mm.
So you really don't have a voice. I remember going to when I was in my young adult years as as a college student, I went to a young adult group. We attended a Korean language church service.
Hmm.
And my dad started to become part of that community. And we went to several of their events. And I was really noticing the differences between their culture and American culture. And I'm sure they honor their wives in their way,
Right.
but it was very, very, very shocking to me. And the very traditional culture, the men would sit at the dining table
Hmm.
while the women and children were in another room during this party, and they were in another room sitting at the low tables on the ground.
Right.
And whenever the men needed something, the women would get up and serve the men,
Yeah.
which and that's traditional.
Right.
But it was a shock to me seeing that.
Well, and even in like America, you kind of still see that going on, right? Like even as an evolved, supposedly, country, I still will get up and, do more than my husband would as far as like serving and stuff like that. So I think even if it's not a cultural thing, it's just something that it's a societal thing that women are taught to serve and be quiet and just kind of that's half of the problem, right? We don't get to actually say what we feel because we need to just serve and take care of others, including children.
Right, right. And I understand that there's differences between masculine energy and feminine energy, and women have that natural energy of being the nurturers and the servant heart, and the men tend to be the task oriented, get things done. And I understand that.
Yeah.
I think the I guess the art is balancing that
Right.
within a relationship. Yeah.
And so the not being good enough or not being worthy or whatever the case may be, and then finding somebody who showed you just a little bit of attention, you think that is what brought you, basically, you felt like nobody else would be interested in you. And then the attention probably felt good, right? I would imagine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember being, not that girl
Mhm.
where the boys would give attention to. I remember I was having girlfriends where, the boys would ask them out
Mm.
and show them attention and flirt with them. And I always felt like I had, like I would get the second look
Yeah.
almost. So
And
yeah.
narcissists tend to be drawn to the person who doesn't feel worthy.
Yeah, I start to realize that. And as the relationship went further along, and then I started to say, you know what, I think I want more than this. I found myself one day saying, I think it would be okay if I was in a marriage where we were just friends. And
Mhm.
I noticed that thought, and I thought, no, I really do want more than that. And then that was, I think, the beginning of me starting my steps to really just end the marriage at that point.
Was there a turning point? Was there one moment that just shifted everything?
I think it was no, not really. I think it's everyone says every now and then friends will say, "Well, was there infidelity? Or is this?" Right? And there really wasn't.
Yeah.
Like I said, he was a good provider, and it was just like what did they say? Cut death by 10,000 cuts or something like that. I don't know what the saying is, something like that. I'm sure I messed that up. So, um, but it's just 10,000 little things that it's just like little cuts saying that I don't think you're worth my time. I don't think you're worth my money. Not being thoughtful, and not that I'm materialistic or anything like
Right.
that, but I want to be cherished.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And so he would actually say, "You're not worth my time."
no, no.
It was just
I never,
ways that he would do it.
yes, yes. So just to be transparent, he never said those words.
Yeah.
It was actually, he probably said he loved me almost every day,
Mm.
but the actions were very different. So,
What actions did you feel like showed you that?
um, just like when we would go I remember one time we needed an appliance in the house, and I said, you know what, I would love for us to have this one appliance. I think it was an oven at the time. Oh no, it was a garbage disposal at the time. Oh no, garbage compactor, that's
Yeah.
it. And then he's like, oh no, we don't need that because it is, it doesn't take a lot of trash or whatever his reasons were. And it was, for example, $600, whatever it was. And then, no, no, we don't need that. But then all of a sudden he said, oh, but here's an ice maker. We could really use that, and it was the exact amount,
Right.
$600. But, it was a no brainer, if that was something that he wanted versus something that I said that I would love for our house. So examples like that, 10,000 times over. So
Yeah. Just discounting what your needs and wants are.
yeah, yeah.
What did your parents think when you got divorced?
They, uh, the, we were divorced twice.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so long story. Yeah, so we were divorced twice. The first time I really didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell anyone in my family. So first, my dad was estranged from myself, so we didn't talk for 10 years. And at the time, I was speaking with my mom. So, but I didn't tell my mom or anyone on my mom's side because I knew that would be kind of like he would be dead to them if
Mhm.
we were to ever reconcile at that point. So, so they never really knew.
So what made you go back to him if you were already divorced? Hmm.
I had at the time, I had I think he was a 6 and a 3 year old. So in my mind, it was like a no brainer. If I can save my marriage and do everything I can to save this marriage for the sake of my kids, I would.
What made
So
you get divorced the first time?
he asked for the divorce the first time.
Oh, what
Yeah.
was his reasoning?
That this was not the life for him. You
Mm.
know, this he felt too constrained in that life, so that was not the life for him.
Mm.
So
How did that
I said,
feel?
well, you know, it added to my stories that I was telling myself.
Mhm.
So, but then at that point, I started taking massive action. I went to therapy. I started reading all kinds of books. I started really doing my work on myself. And then I went back to work because I was fortunate enough to be home when the babies were little for a
Yeah.
little bit each time. And I went back to work and I really just started really working on myself. And then I was growing my self worth at that point.
Mm.
So, but at that point, after the divorce was final, that's when I guess he realized, oh, you know what, I really messed up with
Mhm.
my family, and I insisted on he go with me to couples therapy. So we did for about a year. So, and we worked really hard, and he really did um, work really hard to make sure that we were our priority.
Mm.
And then so we remarried, and after probably about 3 or 4 years, it started to slowly go back to the way it was.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Kind of like the honeymoon period all over again. And then it
yeah.
goes back to we go back
Yeah.
to our old habits. What's his history? Like what was his childhood like?
Both of his parents were teachers.
Mm.
They were divorced, so they were separated for a very long time, and then they were divorced. Um, I think when we were in college, they actually got the divorce that was final. So as long as I knew them, they were separate. But
Yeah.
he was for the most part, an only child because he had an older half sister that was about, I think, 18 years older.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
that was kind of my wonder if he was an only child, because sometimes
yeah,
that obviously shapes the personality itself as
yeah,
well. Yeah.
yeah,
It's harder
yeah.
for them to share.
Yeah, a little bit. Although I think I'm very different. And
Oh, are
maybe
you?
it's because of my struggles
Yeah.
that I became very different. I don't know. Everyone says that I don't appear to have the only child
So,
personality. So,
so you're an only child. So you're basically your whole family's legacy was placed on you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Talk to
yeah.
me about being a defense attorney. Why that?
That so I went into law school kind of like a default. I actually went into a business degree in college and I realized I didn't like business at all. So the only class I really enjoyed was the pre-law class.
Mm.
So the business pre-law class. So I did pre-law and I love that. So I decided I'm going to go be a lawyer. And then I said, well, what field am I going to do? And I started doing all kinds of internships. And then in the end, I liked being in the courtroom because it was
Mhm.
very exciting compared to civil law where you're sitting behind a desk 90% of the time. And I didn't like that. I actually clerked for the prosecutor side as well as the defense side. I found the defense side more enlightening, I think. So in the end, I felt that it was very important to defend the Constitution for
Right.
everyone. You know, sometimes if you think that this guy's a scumbag, you know, and you want to hang him because he did, you know, X, Y, Z, then you can't make an exception for that guy because we're making an exception for you and I. And,
Right.
you know, you got to protect it for all. So in the end, I was basically protecting the Constitution, protecting my clients, making sure the evidence was, if it was obtained, you know, accurately, legally, making sure witnesses actually saw what they thought they saw, you know, and then, I mean, of course I defended them. It was, and many times it's not exactly what it is portrayed to be. So it was interesting.
So tell me how you went from your wounds to wisdom.
So I had some really stressful times at work. And being at work, I started to get very angry and resentful. So as I was being very resentful, I didn't like feeling angry and resentful every time I went to work. So I said, I'm actually tired of that. So something in me just said, you know what, let's choose a different thought when we're dealing with certain situations at work. And then I started listening to different podcasts and different reading all kinds of books. And then I started to really lean into, you know, law of attraction and all the different universal laws,
Hmm.
which I think I was always doing my whole life. But this was really the catalyst to my journey of my becoming of who I am today.
Yeah.
And after my divorce, I think I it was about 2 years. I didn't date anyone. I said, you know, I'm just going to be me for a while. And then I started the online dating thing. That's quite a jungle, not as fun.
Talk about meeting
Um,
narcissists.
well, yeah, yes. And then I actually ran into, was watching a lot of podcasts and stuff on YouTube. And this one coach really caught my attention, what really resonated with me. So I started doing like his little courses here and there. And as I continued to do his little course, I said, this is really good stuff. And a lot of it was really rooted in learning to grow your self-worth, um, really getting into the energy of the idea of yourself,
Mhm.
being in that ideal relationship that you would love to
Right.
be in. And so I took the course. I loved it. So and it really brought down all these principles that I think I've been living my whole life, really put it in a structure, put labels to it. So now it's like something I can apply all the time. So, and as I continue to do that, I use those tools when I started dating, and now I met my husband and he's amazing. So
I have met him. He is amazing.
yeah, thank you.
Yes, very nice guy. Talk to me about being a mother and because the one thing that I have found, and maybe you'll agree or disagree, is that even though we don't like the way that our parents parented, we catch ourselves parenting the same way because it's how we were taught, right? So even you can try your hardest not to do what they do, and then sometimes it's just by default doing exactly what they did that you knew that you shouldn't be doing. Did you experience that?
I did, but not to the huge degree of, I didn't adopt everything that my parents taught me. So
Right.
because they were so strict, I really had no relationship with them other
Mm,
than like a mother, father. You know, they were not the type where I could come and say, "Hey, mom, can I talk with you about something?" You know, we were not close like that at all. Actually, growing up, especially in my high school years and my college years, I did everything I could to get away from them
mm,
because I felt everything that I shared, even, and it wasn't even something really, really deep. It was like, oh yeah, mom, I'm going out with, you know, my girlfriend and all, because we were a group of, it was in college, it was my girlfriend and like six guys. That was our crowd in college. And we would go to the movies. I mean, like I was so bad. We went to the movies and Denny's. That's all we did, you know, and hang out at someone's house. But I got into so much trouble just for being that and staying out late, like past 12. I'm
mm.
like, really? I get off work at 10:30. How am I going to be able to hang out with them?
So a lot of
So
judgment.
yes, so there's a lot of judgment. So I made a very conscious decision after I started having children that I was going to be a very different parent.
Mhm.
So I made sure to speak to my kids when they were very little as if they were little people.
Mhm.
And I would hear them out, but in the end, they still had to do what I said. So, but I did hear them out, and even to this day, we have a very very strong relationship. And I just had breakfast with my son this morning. He says, "You know what, mom? I'm so grateful for you that I have this relationship where I can just come to you and talk to you about anything. There's
Yeah.
no judgment. Just I'm always here, and really there is no judgment. And in the end, I just want them safe and happy. Is really what it is. So."
And what's the difference between your current marriage and your previous marriage?
So this one, just really like night and day.
Mhm.
I remember thinking, and I say this to other people. I said it's like I didn't know this kind of marriage could exist. You know,
Mm.
I thought it only existed in the movies, like in the Hallmark movie or something like that. He is very thoughtful, just really really thoughtful. Puts me first, puts my boys and his boys. He has three boys also, so there's five boys between us. He puts our boys, first. We are a priority. Complete gentleman. I had to learn to how to receive
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
because I always say I was in survival mode because
Hmm.
I was a mom in a sense. I was a dad. I was doing everything. I knew when I was dating, I wanted a partner who was also a doer. so that I wasn't doing, I felt everything,
Right.
around the house, around finances, around like kids extracurricular, anything, so he really is just an incredible partner, very, very attentive. And he cooks. I didn't, that wasn't one of my boxes, but thank you, God, he cooks. So
Yeah, it's nice to have somebody share those duties, right?
yes, yeah, yeah.
Did you ever feel afraid of telling your ex anything, like because maybe you would be judged or you just didn't feel like you had that kind of relationship versus maybe your relationship now?
Yeah, yeah. Coming out of my relationship from him, because we were together 7 years before we actually got married, and then we were probably married another on and off, probably almost another 10 years after that. Um, there was a lot of issues on money.
Mm.
So he had a goal of just really being quite the investor, and that was really that was his pride. And so whenever it came to anything about discussing about household finances, I was afraid,
Hmm.
and it was just, and he provided, but I felt that the energy wasn't it was very obligatory,
Mm.
and it was he would give, but it was like begrudging, so I would always feel anxious
Hmm.
whenever I had to ask, even if it was just, extra money for household bills or anything like that. So I carried that, we call them money paradigms. So I carried that with me in
Yeah.
these stories with me. I had to actually rework a lot of that. And then I basically realized that, what, I am worthy of someone's love, and someone wants to be able to take care of me genuinely. And was now able to receive that. So no, that carried along with me for a while. So
What did your ex think when you started doing your transformational work?
he
How
doesn't
did that work?
he doesn't care for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did that like affect your relationship? Because you did say he went to therapy with you, so he was willing to do some stuff, right?
Yes.
But when we
Yeah.
do our transformational work, we basically become a different person. So
Yes.
how did that affect your relationship and how was his reaction?
So when I asked for the divorce, he wanted to go back to counseling, and I said no.
Yeah.
And then he had said, well, but you're not trying if we don't go. And I said, well, I beg to differ. I've been trying for 17 years. So that's what I said. And then so he was then, trying to court me. Now he's being thoughtful with the flowers and the candy and the
Love
little
bombing
things.
you.
And
He's basically
yes.
love bombing you. Yeah.
And I asked him to stop. And
Mhm.
he said, why? I said, because I know it's temporary and it's making me uncomfortable. So he stopped.
Hmm.
Our divorce was actually very amicable. It wasn't until I got married where I think he got a little put off by that.
Right.
So me, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's very awkward knowing that your former spouse is marrying someone else. So,
Right.
um, but yeah, it got a little, there was a little bit of tension once I got married. And, I just said, you know what, that it, from where I am right now in my evolution, I just say, okay, well, you know what, that it's okay. I'm going to honor you at your current level of awareness, and I'll just be over here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah,
that's all you can do, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What's your favorite, or do you have a favorite tool to teach people?
Yes. So a lot of it, what I love to teach people is the notice what you're noticing, really noticing your thoughts.
Hmm.
And once you notice that you have a thought that is disempowering to you, just really notice it, stop that thought, you pause, and then you move into an empowering thought, which is, basically an affirmation. Um, and for example, I remember when I was dealing with those money paradigms, I would stop, I would pause, and there's like I had like a whole event at a Hobby Lobby and an argument in my head by myself. And my poor friend didn't know, as she's shopping in the next aisle, I had to excuse myself and browse in another aisle. But I was really repatterning in a Hobby Lobby, and really you pause, and I was breathing, and I was saying, because the thoughts were, you're not worthy of anybody's time and money, is what my nasty voice was telling me.
Yeah.
And I would pause and I would breathe through it. And basically, my empowering thought was like, shut up. You deserve a loving relationship. You deserve a career that you absolutely love, that can, if when you're making so much impact that you're making a gajillion dollars,
Right.
and you deserve that. and you deserve a loving partner who will love you unconditionally. That can include supporting you and empowering you and supporting you financially as well. So I had to say that empowering thought on the heels of the disempowering thought probably about 10 times in Hobby Lobby,
I've
like on
had
the
those
heels of each other.
conversations.
It's like, shut up. Yeah. So I'm having this argument in my head in Hobby Lobby by myself. So
I have had many of those myself.
yes. Yes.
Yeah, it is.
It's a lot of work.
Well,
It can be.
there's a meditation that I love, and it basically in the meditation it says your mind is lying to you, right? Because it's trying to tell you these
Yes.
stories about yourself, and it's literally lying to you, especially when you're
Yeah.
down in the dumps and you're not really feeling good or you're picking on yourself or whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. It's literally lying to you, and you have to go back and remind yourself the truth. The truth is that you're worthy.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you had that conversation, had you met your husband yet?
Oh yeah, we were already married.
Oh, and you were
And
already still going through this. Yeah.
yes, yes. But that was right at about the heels of, or at the time when I was deciding to retire from my attorney position.
Mm,
So, there are some stories now because it's like, okay, as an attorney, you for the most part have a steady amount of income coming in.
right.
So the thought of even having to ask my husband for $20, you
Right.
know what I mean? I would have a panic attack,
Right.
So yeah, so I had a lot of repatterning to do on that one.
Yeah, well, because you were conditioned, right? So
Yes.
obviously. And so do people ask you like why would you go from being what people conceive like like a prestigious job of an attorney to a transformational coach? Like do you get a lot of questioning on that?
I do, but what's funny is a lot of the people, my colleagues in the attorney field, they said, "Oh, good for you." And when
Yeah.
I go back to visit for like retirement parties or something, they said, "Look at her; she just looks so alive and happy." So most people understand, and they said, "You know what? That's so Sharon anyway to
Yeah.
be that kind of person. That it's natural." Yeah,
What's one thing that you want to leave this world with people thinking about you? Like what do you want if I know that's like a, random question out of nowhere, right?
yeah.
But what's your legacy?
That I made an impact. That if I want everybody to have a memory that, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that Sharon did this, and
Mm.
if it weren't for Sharon, I was able to move past this.
Mm.
That's what I would love.
And how
Yeah.
do people reach out to you if they want you to help them make an impact on their life?
So you can find me at my website, which is www.sharonvedano.com. And I have workshops all the time that are free. And I give out some, they're free Zoom workshops. I do speaking engagements wherever I can go so that people will listen to me. And yeah, learn some tools in my workshops and then, walk away with that. And if you want some more, then we can have a conversation. We can have a discovery call.
And you and your husband do, before we go, one more thing. I love your project. Can you tell us just a little bit about the project that you guys are working on?
Yes. So, because my husband is married to a life coach, one day he dove right in and said, "You know what? I would love to star in my full feature movie." So, he has been an actor for a while he was doing his other job as in a marketing firm. And he said, "You know what? This is what I would love." So, we actually co wrote, produced a movie, and it's already in the can. And so now we are on the final legs of it. And we are crowdfunding on this one. It's a beautiful movie called Touch the Movie. And it's about a retired police officer who all of a sudden has to take care of his autistic granddaughter, and it's the transformation of their relationship between the two of them. It's absolutely beautiful. But yes, we're crowdfunding right now. We're just getting out there, letting people know about it, just to get us to the finish line so we can get it out to festivals.
And can people see some sort of like a trailer or something on that?
Yes, yes, I will. I'd be glad to send that to you. So there's like a behind the scenes, and we call it a sizzle reel just to show the production quality. It's a beautiful movie. So
Mhm.
yes, I'll
Yeah.
get that to you.
I was very lucky to watch some of that as well, and I think that it's a beautiful thing to offer the world in addition to your coaching. So I would love to add that. So I'll add your all of your information for those listening, as well as the information on the trailer for people to watch your sizzle reel, just so they can see. I think that even watching that for me gave me an understanding of your heart
Mm,
because to make that movie And to write that movie, produce that movie, do all of that with that movie shows where your heart is at. So that's why I wanted to bring it up and mention it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I
Beautiful.
appreciate having you on the show, and I will, like I said, I'll put everything in the notes so people can reach out to you, and hopefully you can help change some more lives.
Very good. Thank you for having me.